The boy had been fascinated with jumping off buildings ever since he was little. The rush of pain that hit him in that split second gave him a thrill unlike anything else. Even though he often ended up in a cast, he never got tired of it. As he grew older and read more books, he finally understood that he had what experts call antisocial personality disorder, what most people would simply call a psychopath. But Mike was incredibly smart. He had mastered the art of using body language and facial expressions to hide his true feelings. Even his own family had no idea anything was different about him. Then one day, everything changed. While he was out in the countryside with some kids, he saw a little girl fall into the water. Without a moment's hesitation, Mike threw off his jacket, dove in, and pulled her to safety. The girl's family couldn't thank him enough, and the other kids praised him for his bravery. But Mike couldn't have cared less about any of that. He simply enjoyed the sensation, nothing more. After this incident, something dark awakened inside Mike. These small thrills no longer did it for him. He decided to go bigger. Using what he had learned, he mixed together a bottle of chloroform, then drove to an abandoned house about 6 miles from home and started talking to the empty air. You think he'd lost his mind? Not at all. He was actually practicing how to strike up conversations with strangers. Mike's plan was this. In broad daylight, he would lure a woman he'd never met into his car, then slip the chloroform out of his pocket at just the right moment. He would deliberately walk around to the back of the car and pull a handkerchief from his backpack, dousing it with the drug. While driving, he would pretend to reach over to adjust the window, then use the handkerchief to clamp over her face and knock her out. To get the timing exactly right, Mike held the handkerchief to his own nose while starting a timer, recording precisely how long it took before he blacked out. This way, he could be sure his technique was flawless. After several days of practice, however, his wife started to notice something was off. Mike kept disappearing for hours at a time, and she began to suspect he was having an affair. She carefully checked the car's odometer and discovered that every time Mike went out, it went up by about 3 miles. And he was making these trips 10 times a day, racking up nearly 40 miles. This only deepened her suspicions. She was determined to find out what her husband was really up to. When she confronted him, Mike quickly made up a lie, saying he'd just been going out for KFC. Once he'd thrown her off the scent, he decided to do a small test run. He used his daughter as a guinea pig, going through the motions of getting her into the car and simulating the entire process. Sure enough, she didn't suspect a thing. The next day, Mike hit the streets looking for his first real target. Since it was his first time, he was nervous. His words came out clumsy and full of holes, and the woman politely declined to get in the car. Back in the driver's seat, Mike noticed his heart was racing, 100 beats per minute. He realized this was probably why he'd failed. So he made a decision. Every day, he would stand on the street and approach women passing by. Occasionally, their boyfriends mistook him for a creep and slapped him around. But over time, his nerves grew steadier. One day, while chatting up women on the street, he ran into his daughter's teacher. She assumed he was running an unlicensed taxi service and suggested he try the train station. Lots more foot traffic there. She meant nothing by it, but Mike took her words to heart. He immediately drove to the station, slipped a fake cast onto his arm to look injured, and headed into a nearby supermarket. There, he spotted a slender woman and asked for her help, playing up his injury. When she saw his arm, her guard dropped, and she followed him toward the car. Once she was inside, Mike prepared to make his move. But as he opened the door, he accidentally sneezed and instinctively covered his nose, forgetting that the handkerchief in his hand was soaked with chloroform. The moment he realized what he'd done, he bolted for the supermarket. The woman in the car saw him run off and quickly got out herself. Just like that, his prey had slipped away. Mike went inside, splashed water on his face, and figured the day was a total loss until he spotted another opportunity. At that moment, John and his girlfriend were browsing the supermarket. They'd split up to grab different things. As she walked away, his girlfriend playfully tripped on purpose, making John burst out laughing. This little scene caught Mike's attention. Mary's cute, playful charm made even Mike, still washing his face, crack a smile. He walked over and struck up a conversation. Mary wanted to buy a drink but didn't have enough change, so she asked Mike to break a bill. As she was leaving, she complimented the keychain dangling from his pocket. Mike seized the moment, telling her he actually sold them and had more in his car. He smoothly guided Mary toward the vehicle and pulled out a box, pretending it was his merchandise. At first, Mary was cautious and didn't get in, but when she noticed a family photo displayed inside the car, her defenses crumbled. The instant she sat down, Mike clamped the drugged handkerchief over her face. Mary struggled desperately, but within moments she went limp. Meanwhile, John noticed his girlfriend had been gone too long and went back into the supermarket to look for her. He searched everywhere but couldn't find her anywhere. The only lead came from a driver who, after seeing Mary's photo, told John she'd gotten into a car with some man. But even with that information, John never saw Mary again. He plastered missing person flyers all over the streets and went on television to plead for any information about her whereabouts. Nothing. At that very moment, Mike was sitting in front of his TV, watching John's anguish, feeling deeply satisfied with himself. But that high couldn't last forever. So Mike decided to reach out to John directly. He sent letters inviting him to meet at a McDonald's, but Mike never showed. This drove John crazy with frustration. And Mike? He just watched from an upper floor, drinking it all in, savoring every moment. After tormenting John this way several times, Mike got bolder. He'd set up meetings, then pretend to be a stranger and observe from the sidelines as John grew more helpless and enraged. The thrill was intoxicating. To push it even further, Mike started following John around, then suddenly appearing behind him to reveal that he was the one who had taken Mary. To prove it, Mike described Mary's appearance and body in detail. Hearing this, John exploded with rage. 3 years had passed since Mary vanished. No one knew how he had survived those 3 years. John unleashed all his fury on Mike, fists flying, but Mike didn't fight back. Nothing gave him more satisfaction than this kind of torment. Desperate to learn what had happened to his girlfriend, John had no choice but to follow Mike to a remote, empty field. Mike told him that if he drank this cup of coffee, he would finally understand what Mary had gone through. At first, John was on guard and refused. But when they reached a certain tree, his emotions came flooding back. This was the very spot where he and Mary had parted ways. They had buried 2 coins together beneath that tree. John's longing for Mary overwhelmed him, and he couldn't hold himself together. In the end, he got into Mike's car and drank the coffee. Within moments, he fell into a deep sleep. When John finally woke up, he found himself buried underground. Only then did he truly understand what Mary had experienced.